1379 BC, 25:16 AM. Joshua, aged 110 years old, died. He had been born in Egypt and was 42 years old at the Exodus in 1447 BC. 82 at the conquest of Canaan he led. This year was a fateful one in Egypt as well. Akhenaten is the victim of a conspiracy by the priesthoods to remove him. He is poisoned by General Horemheb. The Amarna dynasty is overthrown and the city between Upper and Lower Egypt is destroyed. Nationalism has taken root and the old gods are usurped by the new Osirian cult. He had been hated for weakening the cult seated at Karnak, Thebes, Memphis and Saqqara by displacing the older Ennead pantheon. At Amarna he erected the Per-Ankh, or House of Life, where new priests were trained in the worship of Aten, a university that admitted the worship of Isis and Osiris. He abolished idolatry and he married his stepmother, the famous Nefertiti, a former Amorite princess from Mitanni who had been married to Amenhotep's father. She bore Akhenaten many children. The beautiful Nefertiti's face was preserved on a bust excavated by German archaeologists at Amarna. Akhenaten was no doubt influenced by the Exodus. During his 33-year reign, he ignored the pleas of the Canaanites for military help, ignored the Amorite power and the emerging Hittites. The 377 Amarna tablets reveal the presence of an Iron Age empire in the world. The Hittites first developed military-grade iron weapons, and they were feared for this reason, because iron is superior to bronze and copper armour and weaponry. This is the Late Bronze Age. Prior to the 1447 BC disasters and Exodus, the territories of Nubia, Libya and Syria paid tribute to Egypt, but now, after these calamities, the Nubians, Libyans and Syrians did not pay tribute, and Egypt did nothing about it, just as they did nothing about the Canaanite pleas. Egypt kept a lid on their true condition and locked down its borders so foreign powers could not discover how ruined the country was. Amarna itself had only been inhabited 15 years before it was destroyed. Egyptologists largely concentrate on the Osirian cult and on Isis when expounding upon things Egyptian, but scholars and archaeologists have long noted that the worship of Osiris and Isis came late in the history of Egypt, and there is a very biblical reason for this. In 1447 BC, the Egyptians blamed the Israelites and their God for the catastrophe that destroyed their country, crops, cities, people, and temples. The Egyptian survivors scraped off all of the known and reachable references to the Virgin giving birth to the sun, to Set and to Atum-Io, the ancient father-son. The importance of the early Sethite builders of the Giza complex to the Hebrews prompted the later Egyptians to efface all references to Set as a deity rather than as a pre-flood lineage. Set was demonized and Osiris and Isis became the new gods of Egypt. 1. Joshua. 2. Murder of Tutankhamun. 4. Lost cities and ancient mysteries of Africa and Arabia. 5. The Bible as history. 7. The origin of Greek civilization. 1369 BC, 25:26 AM. The Danites were a growing tribe of Israel. In this year they took the Phoenician city of Laish that belonged to Sidon and occupied it because their lot in Israel was too confined. Some believe this marked the beginning of the flight of Dan from Israel, one tracing our ancestors. 1365 BC, 25:30 AM. Israel is invaded and occupied by the Babylonians of the Hittite dynasty under King Chushan-Rishathaim of Babylon. The Hittite-controlled army razed the Amorite cities, destroyed Mitanni, and removed the Amorite presence throughout Syria. This is the first invasion of Israel in its 42nd year occupying Canaan. The invasion prompted the flight of more Israelites, mainly those of Dan and Zebulun. These people would sail to Crete, to Aegean Islands, to Asia Minor, and to early Greece. Hittite inscriptions reveal that as early as the 14th century BC, the Helladic kings ruled Pamphylia and Lesbos. As will be shown, scholars attest that the Helladic kings came from Palestine. These people were called Achaeans. 1. Judges. Jasher. 2. The Greek myths. 1357 BC, 25:38 AM. This year begins the narrative of the Book of Judges. A national Israelite hero named Othniel organizes resistance against Babylon and succeeds, becoming the first of the judges of the tribes. The land has 40 years of rest from war. This was 50 years, a jubilee period, that Israel occupied Canaan, and 450 years, 50 times 9, since the Abrahamic covenant was confirmed in 1807 BC. It was also 520 years, 52 times 10, after the Abrahamic covenant was instituted. 90 years after Exodus in 1447 BC was 1080 months. 1 Judges. 1351 BC, 2544 AM. The new capital city of Yin of the Shang dynasty was built in the reign of the 5th king, Taigeng. This was also referred to as the Tang dynasty. This means that in the preceding 96 years since 1447 BC, when the mandate of heaven caused a dynastic change, there ruled 4 other Shang kings. It was at this site, later called Anyang, that Chinese archaeologists would find tens of thousands of archaic Chinese texts on turtle shells and bones concerning these kings and the devastation that led to the emergence of their dynasty in 1447 BC. This date in history has dynastic-related calendrics. It is 864 times 4 before Armageddon in 2106 AD, or 3456 years when the chief cornerstone will begin his millennial dynasty. It was 2688 years, 1344 plus 1344, since the planet entered its present orbit, the Anunnaki year of 1344, being when man was banished from Eden in 3895 BC. This was the year 2022 of the Olmec calendar, a people in the Americas related to the Chinese. 1488 of the Anunnaki dynasty is 744 plus 744, a golden proportion number like 864, and also like 888, the number of years after the flood the Yin was built. This year was a very important one in Chinese history, 1 End of Eden. 1345 BC. King Latinus II of Italia, Chittim, died in his 50th year of rule. This ends the chronologically arranged ancient Hebrew Book of Jasher, which covered 2550 years of history from 3895 to 1345 BC, or 51 jubilees. Latinus II is the last known ruler of Italia until after the Trojan War, 1229 BC, where we will soon find that the name Latinus had become a distinctive dynastic title in ancient Italy. 24 years after the Danites invaded and occupied a part of Phoenicia, a massive fleet of Danites with other Israelites crossed via Crete into the Peloponnese, joining their Danaan kin already living in the country. Thebes was destroyed, as was Argos. The Danaan forced the local populace and Argives to coexist with them. Thebes had originally been occupied at this time by Canaanites, who escaped the earlier Israelite invasion in 1407 BC. Now Phoenician would rule Thebes, the city of 7 gates, named after the Egyptian city of Thebes. Athens was invaded and the Danaan burnt down the temple of Apollo. Israel, Phoenicia and Cyprus, Iaddan, emerged together at this time as a unified people, Iaddan being the island gateway to the Aegean. The Danite fleet sailed up the coast of Asia Minor and founded mercantile bases at such places that would be called Ephesus and Miletus. The locals called the people by the name of the gods they worshipped. They quickly learned that these strangers worshipped a god called Yah, and that they also venerated a cow goddess that was depicted as a dragon sphinx. This Yah they designated in Asia Minor as Eor, which they gave an Egyptian origin to as Hathor, the cow goddess, not realizing that these people, Danites, had lived in Goshen in Egypt for 210 years, virtually at the feet of the Sphinx at Giza. The famous Ionians were none other than the Danites of Israel. This date was 1224 months after the Exodus, 102 years, the sum 1224 being half of 2448, the Annus Mundi year of 1447 BC, when the Israelites escaped Egypt. It was also for 14 years a cursed earth period to the civil war in Israel that would rift it into two kingdoms, Israel and Judah in 931 BC. This was also 864 years before the Greeks, descended from Japheth and Israel, defeated the Persians in 481 BC. Also, this was 600 years before the other 10 tribes of Israel were forcibly deported to the east and northeast by the Assyrians in 745 BC. On the eastern side of the Aegean, the Ionians, the Danaan, were associated with the Sphinx, but on the western side, where Greece and Mycenae lay, the newcomers were associated with the Great Pyramid, seal of Israel. In this year, Argos was destroyed and Mycenae overrun by the Danaan. The Danaan built a small-scale replica of the Great Pyramid in Argos. Long ago, the Greek traveller Pausanias wrote about this small pyramid built of large blocks 5 feet long. Scholars had dismissed this account until in 1936 and 37 AD, the pyramids of Argolis had been discovered and excavated. A second pyramid at the foot of the Arachnaeus Mountains, a mile and a half away. With base sides at about 44 feet and a height of 33 feet, we see the intent to copy the proportions of the Great Pyramid. The proof they are replicas of the Giza monuments is found in that the pyramids of Argolis have apex stones. Historians make it clear that the Argives began vanishing as the Argives emerged. This is the beginning period of Israelite presence in Europe, a heritage shown in that the earliest chroniclers in history claim that Europe was named after a Phoenician princess who had been abducted. This is exactly what happened. The Israelites assimilated with the Phoenicians early on, taking their cities and ports and using them in their exodus from Palestine into the European world. 1. Jasher. 2. The origin of Greek civilization. 3. Augustine, City of God, Book 18. 4. Return of the Serpents of Wisdom. 5. Odyssey of Gods. 6. Life as we know it.